morning, everybody. Perrin Lovett here for the Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper, on Tuesday, February the 16th, 2021. Hello to everybody watching at YouTube and freedomprepper.com, the Freedom Prepper community, and everybody listening to the podcast. And our featured topic today is something that Michael Snyder wrote up at his cheery End of the American Dream blog. It's a very good article about a very good subject that a lot of us know, some of us participate in, and that is going off grid, living off the grid as the collapse happens all around us. And he's got some great examples of people that have kind of, checked out and moved away to the tiny house or the RV, wherever it might be, just to kind of get away. I noticed a couple of things about this. It's mainly, well, I can't really tell from the article, but it seems to me like these are older people doing what they're doing without families, which is, good and well. But I wanted to propose something similar but a little different. And if you can't leave the city and move off to the middle of the woods and live like Jeremiah Johnson, there is something you can do. I call it mentally bugging out. You can live off the grid even if you're on the grid. One of the things the last thing that he talks about is getting out of the system. Countless others have gotten free of the system, and you can too. And you can do it even if you're still technically in the system. Harry Brown wrote a book years ago called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and it's kind of mind over matter. You can keep working in your job, keep doing the things that you're doing with little changes, such as not supporting the globalists in their efforts. Get rid of the cable TV, stop watching their movies, stop obsessing about all of the things that they tell you that you have to do, because you don't. And one thing might lead to another. Something else that's really important: do the things that they're telling you not to do. Such as, one thing they cannot stand are normal families. They don't like children. They don't like people at all. So the best thing that you can do to stick it to them is to get married if you're younger and have as many children as God will give you, and raise them, the old way. And, all of us, regardless of our age, we kind of like to fantasize or reminisce about the good old days. For me it was, the 70s, the early 80s. For you it might be the 50s or the 60s. The evidence is there that during all those times the rot was already in place. So maybe it's time to go back and maybe read Little House on the Prairie and see how people lived back when America was still America, and still a Christian nation. And you don't have to live in a farmhouse without electricity, but put the value on the valuable things, and let them have their rapidly dying system. Because when it does collapse, and it will, it's already happening, it'll just be us. And there won't be that much to rebuild if we've already built in the first place. Just something to think about. And now this was, I ignored this yesterday. We all saw the news. I call this the big pointless story. But Saturday afternoon, Donald Trump was acquitted again by the U.S. Senate, again, almost on the exact same lines that he was last year, the yearly impeachment of Donald Trump. This one ended in a 57 to 43 vote to convict. Of course, you need 67 votes, so it failed. And the big news that everybody is all over is the 7 Republicans that Susan Collins, Mittens Romney, and 5 others that were traitors to to the GOP that completely let everybody else down. So traitors to traitors, who cares? All of this is it's a little late, and honestly, it just doesn't matter. It was just like the Russia hoax. This case, these were trumped up charges of nothing, and we all knew based on Rand Paul's preliminary motion how the vote was going to go. It was exercise in futility, as is just about everything that happens in Washington. But President Trump, former President Trump, had some remarks where he thanked his lawyers, thanked the people, thanked the Congress, and he said all the things that politicians usually say, about this great, wonderful, united system that so many people want to check out of because it doesn't work anymore. But he said, "We remain one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God, and it's our responsibility to preserve this magnificent inheritance for our children and for generations of Americans to come. May God bless all of you, and may God forever bless the United States of America." I don't want to disagree with the man after his great victory, but that's just all wrong. We're not one people. We are. If we were one people, this would be a totally different situation. We're certainly not one family. And there are a lot of us under God, but I don't think God is very happy with what has become of the United States. There's not much of a magnificent inheritance to leave to anybody. Those children and those generations, as I pointed out previously, you've got to have children to leave something to, and we just haven't. So, and forever is a long time. I say God bless the remnant and the Americans that are left in the remains of the United States. And like I said, rebuilding is easier if you've already started the project. Now, more realistically, I've got some other articles here. Dr. Roberts, he's older, has the time to just sit around and analyze these things and keep cranking out it's really the same article over and over, but it's always compelling. He talks about the in progress, not coming, but in progress disintegration of the United Soviet States of America, the USSA. This is a statement I can agree with. There is no single American identity. Indeed, the foundational ethnicity and foundational ideas embodied in the Constitution are under attack, and they are opposed as racist and exploitative. This leaves the United States as a geographical location in which diverse peoples are further divided by the preaching of hatred. Yeah, a nation is a people in a place, or people even if there is no place. We've got the place, but we've got about, I don't know, how many, pick your number of peoples that aren't quite at war with each other yet, but it's just a matter of time. Is there a chance to claw it back? I don't think so, but some people are trying. Lou Rockwell's site had somewhat inspirational news out of South Carolina. South Carolina, the first state to secede in the 1860s, is at it again. The legislature may consider what they're calling nullification legislation, whereby the states get in the way of the federal Leviathan and just negate what comes out of Washington. That was easier in 1861 because back then Washington was Washington and the states were all free and sovereign. Now the states are well integrated into the empire. But what they're calling for, let's see here, call for the state to ignore unconstitutional White House executive orders as determined by the state itself. Sounds good. Consider all federal laws that exceed the delegated powers in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution null and void and of no force whatsoever. That everyone should do that. And here's the dangerous part. Call for an Article 5 Convention of the States to amend the Constitution to impose additional constraints on the federal government. And there are some more you can read. I've got all the links at freedomprepper.com. The Constitution, let's have an Article 5 con to revise the Constitution. That would have been a great idea in 1861 or 1961. If you call an article convention today, just like if you propose amendments through the other process today, God knows what you'll get. And this notion of putting more constraints on the federal government, Article 1 is pretty clear. The whole thing is pretty clear. There are massive constraints on paper against the federal government in Washington. None of them worked because what's on paper does not create a magic force field to hold back the Kraken, the monster, and it never will. So it's the people, not the laws. They had another at Lou Rockwell's site. They had another article on nullification. This one was a little bit more realistic, things that people can do in their hometowns. Take a look at that link. They're not calling out the militia yet. They're just talking about what happens when you call up the militia. More of us than there are of them, and it may be a lot easier than you think. That's a very good article, thought-provoking. As is Carl Denninger's latest piece on the medical news of the day that we're not really supposed to discuss. It's interesting. Something comes out that everybody would want to talk about, then they tell you can't talk about it, and then it's almost like they wonder, why aren't people talking about it? They'll bring it up. Of course, the narrative by then has changed, and if you point out the change, well, then you're back to square one. Getting really tired of this dance. Really tired of this dance. But what if this whole thing is a 1-2 knockout combo against humanity? Just hypothetically, let's say you have a disease that may or may not have been weaponized in a laboratory. It's bad enough as it is. But let's say that somebody creates a cure for said hypothetical disease. That's not really a cure. In fact, it's a catalyst to trigger the underlying disease and basically wipe out everybody who has the combination. There's a study that's been done, hypothetically, I guess. Can't talk about these things in reality, but some cats, poor cats, little house cats, were given a disease and then given a cure, and I assume they had some control groups. I didn't look at the underlying study, but the way you do those things, you have your experimental class of cats with this hypothetical stuff, and then you have a control group. Some of the cats will get the disease but not the cure. Some get the cure, not the disease, and some are left completely alone. All of the cats, every single one of them that had the disease and got the cure, died. So could that happen in the real world to people? Well, here's another story, and this story from Ron Unn's site uses the same language as Carl used about a slightly different subject, both of them calling this a nightmare scenario. And we're not talking about cats, we're talking about people in Great Britain and especially in Israel, where there's been not an overreaction, but a very highly coordinated reaction to a disease, to include the mass use of a cure, and it's kind of having the cat effect, if you will. As things stand at the moment, it is hard to deny the possibility of a correlation between mass curing and a sharp spike in hypothetical disease cases both in Israel and Britain. It's like this was planned by somebody who wanted to catch humanity off guard with a disease that was really bad and then finish them off with a cure that's much worse. If this is true, then this is probably the worst act of warfare in human history. And I wonder what Mr. Trump would say that God thinks about that. I imagine God would be, suggesting that this calls out for vengeance. But you can't even talk about those things. Here's something else they don't want you talking about. When they're not killing us, they're trying to dumb us down and turn us into mindless slaves. And it's happened, it's everywhere. Nowhere is it worse than in the schools. And by the schools, especially in America, we're talking about everything from preschool to graduate school. And I found a story, an op-ed life experience story from American Renaissance about a math professor who got his academic start at Georgia Tech, and he got his PhD in math. Obviously, a very smart person. Worked in the private field. He's worked as an adjunct professor, and he's got some alarming. None of this is new. I've known about this kind of stuff for years now. He puts it all together very well. You really need to read this one. Even the math departments, mathematics, the pure science, is under attack. I mean, first, they started with English and history and sociology, psychology, political science, law, and they've worked their way down. But even into out of the soft sciences, it's pretty easy to mess with things that are pure conjecture, like sociology or philosophy. But when it comes to 2 plus 2 equaling 4, you would think, there's really no room to wiggle around that. You would be wrong, because he's got a cited example, one example of many, of groups that suggest that 2 plus 2 equaling 4 is some kind of cultural appropriation, some kind of brainwashing, probably white supremacy, the kind of which that resulted in insurrection. If you add up numbers and they reach an absolute sum, you're practically destroying democracy. So there's wiggle room all over the place. Wiggle room that leads to fraud and ultimately the weakening of math. And if you lose math, then you've the schools today, especially with the young kids, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And without the math, you don't have any science. You don't have engineering, and there is no technology. That's why, like I talked about yesterday, in our urban areas, the street lights, one by one, start to go out. And they stay out because we're losing the ability to fix them, because you have people that object to 2 plus 2 equaling 4. Those ones and zeros don't add up to the code to transmit to the smart light, and pretty soon nothing works. And then the streets start to crumble, and the sewage overflows, and all of a sudden you're back in the Stone Age. Take a look at that. And the last word of the day. This is something I can't remember when I called this, but I think it was about this time last year. There was a hoax going around last year that I called as a hoax, and I've been insisting it was a hoax. It could be anything, because we live in hoax nation now. Everything is fake, everything. But I was wondering, what's the next one? These people are smart. They're evil, but they're smart. They've got to be working on the next one. The next great, big, shocking world-changing, lock yourself up forever kind of deal. What could it be? And I said, Mars attacks. I really think they are going to tell us next that the aliens have invaded. And God knows what they'll do to make it look like the aliens have invaded. Aliens, in my opinion, don't exist. I mean, if there's life out there, it's probably, microbes that somehow drifted away from Earth if there could possibly be intelligent life that's advanced enough to travel here from somewhere else, odds are they would avoid this planet like the plague. They'd probably put up, intergalactic, detour signs. Don't go to this little blue planet. These people are insane. But I bet that, why do I think this? Because in the past, 5 or 10 years, they just keep dropping these little stories. And when they start dropping little stories, it starts to establish a pattern. And the Sun, they don't drop them in the best places, but the Sun has a FOIA release from the Pentagon, wherein the military says, yeah, we've got some UFO technology. We captured it and we've been experimenting on it. And you've got all these videos that get released. The F-14 pilot saw a flash and he followed it. And it was a cigar-shaped thing and it took off at Mach 20 and they couldn't catch it. It's coming. Trust me. It's they'll probably nuke a city and say, the aliens did that. And then to keep the aliens from killing us, we've got to lock ourselves up. Don't eat, and put your firstborn child outside the front door. This will appease the aliens, and we'll flatten the alien curve. It's coming, and people, if it comes, people will fall for it. But not us, because we can make sense of these things while we still have time. Thank you. This felt like an odd show. It's remarkably cold in here today, and I didn't like the headlines, but make of them what you will. Anyway, we'll make more hay tomorrow, Wednesday, and I hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you soon.